I never thought I'd be the guy responsible for sending an HOA president to jail, but here we are. It all started just 3 months ago when I bought a corner lot in Oakwood Estates. The place looked like something out of a real estate magazine, tree-lined streets, neatly trimmed lawns, quiet mornings, and just the right amount of space between houses. It felt private, but still part of a tight-knit community. There was just one problem. Oakwood Estates had one of the strictest homeowners associations in the entire county. And leading it, Karen Whitfield, a woman whose name alone made neighbors flinch. She runs the HOA like it's her own personal kingdom. My realtor had warned with a sigh. Just be careful. I laughed it off. I mean, I'm a civil engineer. I know how to follow rules. What could she possibly throw at me that I couldn't handle? 2 days after moving in, I found out. I was unloading boxes when a sleek silver Mercedes pulled up right into my driveway. Out stepped a woman in her 50s, immaculate blonde bob, designer sunglasses, and that unmistakable aura of someone who lives to enforce rules. Before I could even greet her, she shoved a thick binder into my hands. "Welcome to Oakwood Estates," she said with a tight-lipped smile. "I'm Karen Whitfield, HOA president. This," she tapped the binder, "is our community rule book. You'll want to study it. We've had issues with the previous owners not respecting our standards." I stayed polite and took the binder. "Thanks. I'm James Miller. Actually, I already reviewed the digital copy my agent sent over, but I appreciate the hard copy." For a split second, I caught a flicker of irritation on her face. "Well, good," she replied, straightening up. "Just remember, you're on the corner lot, highly visible. Your home sets the tone for the whole neighborhood. We'll be watching to make sure everything stays compliant." And with that ominous farewell, she turned and marched back to her Mercedes like a suburban dictator returning to her palace. I stood there, binder in hand, wondering what I just got myself into. But that was only the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Karen began leaving violation notices on my door for the most ridiculous things. One said my garbage bin was visible from the street 30 minutes after pickup. Another cited my lawn for being a 1/4 inch too long. And the most absurd? She claimed the shade of my mailbox was midnight blue when it should have been approved navy. I handled each complaint calmly, corrected what I could, and made sure to document everything. I had a gut feeling I might need a paper trail. Things escalated when I decided to build a fence around my backyard. I followed every rule to the letter, submitted all the proper paperwork, used approved materials, followed the exact color and height requirements. The HOA board, minus Karen, since she lived next to me and had to recuse herself, reviewed and approved the plans. I even brought in a licensed surveyor to mark the exact property lines a day before installation, just to make sure everything was by the book. He placed bright orange flags and marked the boundaries with spray paint. Everything was perfectly set for construction the next morning. But, as I'd soon find out, Karen had other plans. The next morning, my doorbell rang, nonstop. I opened the door to find Karen on my porch, arms tightly crossed, face bright red with fury. "What's the meaning of this?" she snapped, pointing wildly toward my backyard. "Those hideous orange flags and that obnoxious paint are a direct violation of HOA rules. Section 12, Paragraph 4. No bright colors or temporary structures visible from the common areas." I took a steady breath, determined to keep calm. "Good morning, Karen. Those are standard property markers placed by a licensed surveyor. They're temporary and required for the fence installation, which, by the way, was fully approved by the HOA committee. They'll be gone as soon as the fence is up." She ignored every word. Her eyes squinted past me toward the yard. "Well, your survey is wrong," she said coldly. "That back corner flag? It's at least 2 feet onto the green belt. I've lived here 15 years. I know exactly where the boundary is." I remained composed. The survey was done using county records and GPS coordinates. "If you'd like to see the documents." "I don't need to see anything," she barked, cutting me off. "Remove those markers immediately. They're an eyesore, and that paint is going to kill the grass. Take them down or you'll be fined $200. I stood firm. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. They're necessary for contractors." who should be here in about 2 hours. Karen's jaw clenched, her face twisted with rage. "We'll see about that," she muttered through gritted teeth before storming back to her house. By the time the contractors arrived, I had filled them in. They confirmed the markers were correctly placed and got to work. Post holes were measured, flagged, and digging began. By lunchtime, they were setting concrete for the posts along the back of my property. I had to leave for a meeting at work, but the foreman, Dave, assured me they'd finish setting the posts by the end of the day. But when I returned that evening, something felt off. Dave's truck was gone. My fence was half finished, and a note was taped to my front door. Had to stop work. Property markers removed. Need new survey before continuing. Call me, Dave. My stomach dropped. I rushed to the backyard, and sure enough, every single property marker was gone. The orange flags vanished. The spray paint lines scrubbed away completely, leaving faint, patchy spots in the grass. There was no doubt in my mind who had done this. Thankfully, I had prepared for this kind of thing. When I moved in, I installed a set of discrete security cameras around my property, partly to protect my tools, partly because Karen's welcome had sent off every red flag imaginable. I pulled out my phone, opened a camera app, and started scrubbing through the day's footage. And there she was, clear as day in full HD, Karen Whitfield, wearing gardening gloves, carrying a large tote bag. She marched into my backyard and began removing every single survey marker. One by one, she crouched down with a brush and some kind of solvent, scrubbing away the spray-painted boundary lines like a criminal covering her tracks. And the kicker? The footage showed her walking back to her house, with a smug grin on her face. I was stunned. This wasn't just petty HOA nonsense anymore. This was criminal. In our state, tampering with survey markers is a serious offense, a felony. It can mess up legal boundaries, create disputes, and cause thousands in damages. And Karen had done it on camera. I sat down at my computer, heart pounding, and started researching to confirm what I already knew. She had crossed a line, and I was going to make sure she faced the consequences. Tampering with survey markers isn't just frowned upon, it's illegal, a serious offense in this state. One that can come with hefty fines, and even jail time. The next morning, I called the local police non-emergency line and calmly explained what had happened. The officer on the other end seemed unsurprised. Apparently, they'd dealt with similar complaints before. "Do you have any evidence?" he asked. When I told him I had security footage, he didn't hesitate. "We'll send someone out within the hour." Less than 45 minutes later, 2 officers were standing in my living room as I showed them the footage, clear as day, of Karen sneaking into my yard, removing the survey markers, and scrubbing away the paint lines like a vandal on a mission. One officer took detailed notes while the other made a call. They turned to me. "Would you like to press charges?" I didn't want it to come to this. But after the lies, the sabotage, and the outright illegal behavior, I nodded. Yes, I want to press charges. From my front window, I watched as the 2 officers walked over to Karen's house. I didn't expect much. Maybe a warning. Maybe a stern talking to. Instead, 10 minutes later, I saw them walk her out in handcuffs. Her hands were behind her back, her face flushed red with rage and disbelief. And when she spotted me watching from my window, she looked genuinely stunned. That afternoon, one of the officers returned to get my formal statement. He informed me that Karen had been charged with 2 serious offenses: criminal mischief and tampering with official property markers, both felony-level crimes in our state. She denied everything at first, he told me with a sigh. Kept insisting she was just trying to maintain neighborhood standards, that the flags were unsightly. But once we mentioned the video, he shook his head. She stopped talking. The fallout was fast and brutal. The very next day, I got a call from the HOA's vice president. He apologized profusely for Karen's behavior and informed me that an emergency board meeting had been called. By the end of the week, Karen Whitfield was officially removed as HOA president. But it didn't stop there. Karen was a licensed real estate agent. News of her arrest and pending charges spread quickly. Rumor had it her brokerage firm had placed her on indefinite leave, and that her professional license was now in jeopardy. 2 weeks later, I was out front trimming the hedges when I saw a Mercedes pull into her driveway. She stepped out, looking nothing like the polished, powerful woman who once ran the neighborhood. No designer glasses, no perfect hair, no smug expression. She froze when she saw me. Our eyes met. For a long moment, she just stood there, stunned, as if finally realizing how much damage she had done to her reputation, her career, her carefully curated image of authority. Then she spoke. Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "You've ruined me," over some stupid property markers. I set my tools down, took a breath, and met her gaze. "No, Karen," I said quietly. "You ruined yourself." Her expression crumpled, the weight of accountability, something she'd probably never felt before, finally settled on her shoulders. Without another word, she turned and walked back inside. The door closed behind her with a quiet but undeniable finality. Click.